So I was sort of a music coach all of a sudden, and then that was I don't know that I necessarily knew what to do with that role because I felt overwhelmed. But it was fun nevertheless, and it did inspire me.
This is about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new record as well.
That's great.
Amazing, amazing. So I did read, born and raised in Norway, but then you moved to the States for a while, and now are you back in Norway?
Yeah,
no?
I guess I have been. I have been mostly for the last 2 years. I guess
Okay.
because of the pandemic, I went home and I ended up staying here a while. But I'm going back to America now for the tour, and I still keep a place in Los Angeles. So I'm trying to figure out where I live.
Okay. Right on. Well, tell me about growing up in Norway.
Yeah, man. I grew up. I'm the youngest of three, or I'm the youngest of four, but I'm the fourth guy. And
Three ahead of you.
There's three ahead of me. Yeah. I think I was supposed to save the marriage of my mom and dad, but I don't think I succeeded in that.
Okay.
They got divorced when I was like 5, and
Okay.
so I lived with my mom for the first 12 years of my life, and then and then I um and then I moved to live with my dad in the city, and that was a big shift. Like I grew up in the suburbs, and then I moved to the city um to live with my dad. And at this point I was playing music. I was trying to write songs, and when I moved to the city, I started playing in bands also. But I quickly realized I really enjoyed, I enjoyed playing with people, but I really, really enjoyed the alone time of just sitting obsessively writing songs on my own. I could do that just for hours and days, and that's what I did really. And I spent most of my teens just trying to write songs on my own, and plucking up the courage to go on stage and performing and scratching that itch as well, which I could do in the city because my oldest sister, she worked at all these sort of cool clubs where they had open mic nights, and even though I
Okay.
was too young to get in, she would like vouch for me and get me in, and that was sort of my first experience performing my own songs, but also cover songs, and just getting into it really. So that was exciting.
For
Yeah.
sure, for sure. Well, anyone else in your family musical, or were you the only one that kind of was passionate about it?
It was definitely sort of my passion and my identity in many ways. I was always encouraged to play and to listen. My mom listened very passionately to Eurythmics and Pet
Okay.
Shop Boys and these things. Um, and I felt I had a good audience at home. My oldest sister, who worked in the cool clubs, and who hung out with all these local rock people, she played drums, and we played in the band together as well. So she learned to play the drums.
Wow.
So there was definitely, like, she didn't pursue it as a career, but there was definitely music in the family. But I always felt I felt like music was sort of a very private, very sort of alone thing that I did, and that I really enjoyed sort of cultivating on my own. It was my own world, sort of. But I always felt very encouraged at home.
That's amazing. With what your two middle siblings, they didn't play any instruments at all, or were you all kind of put into piano lessons or anything like that early on? That
No, I think maybe they would have wanted to be pushed more in that direction. I I I remember, like, just one day coming home from school and saying to my mom, I want to learn to play the guitar. I need to, because at that point I was already, music was my main hobby. It was just listening to music, watching MTV
Hmm.
reading books about music, everything about it was exciting to me. And so the natural next step was to try to learn an instrument. And I said to my mom, I want to play the guitar. And she said, okay, I gotta, let's see if we can, if we can afford a guitar and sign you up for lessons, really. And I didn't take to these lessons really easily. I wasn't a natural on the instrument. I didn't really enjoy music theory. I never really took to it or even learned it. And I started like classical guitar, and that was, that's not what I was interested in. So it took me a while to really become comfortable with the guitar. I felt a lot of resistance within me, because I've never really felt like an instrumentalist in a sense. I've never wanted to play the guitar except for I needed an instrument to compose, and
Sure.
I needed it just as a vehicle to write songs, but I never really felt any ambition when it came to like
Becoming,
playing.
yeah, like a shredder, or
Yeah,
like, yeah,
no,
learning
no.
those intricate, yeah, for
I
sure. I
never
totally understand.
I never did that. And
Hmm.
so I just wanted to find, a way to learn the chords that I liked, and learn to play songs, really, so that I could learn how to write my own songs.
Hmm. With that, like, what year were you, or how old were you when you came home and asked your mom about the guitar?
I think I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I was born in 82. So this was probably around, yeah, like in the like 90, 91. I think I think we were handed out like brochures at school from like the sort of communal guitar or music lesson
Hmm.
uh, thing that you have there, which is pretty cool. And you just, I just said, I crossed off guitar, and I thought that was it. But yeah, I was not a great student, so to speak. But I'm really glad I did it, and I did have a guitar teacher who pushed me, and who saw that classical guitar was not for me. He said, okay, I'll teach you to play the bossa nova, because he was half Brazilian, and
Oh, wow.
he recognized that I was more interested in, pop music and melodic music and songs. And he said, okay, I'll try to meet you halfway. I'll teach you pop music from Brazil. And that was a great entry point for me. That's been a part of my life ever since,
Hmm.
Brazilian music, and a love for that kind of harmony and that kind of songwriting. So that was, I think I have him to thank for that.
Was that something that you had been introduced to prior to that, or was it like, okay, I'm going to teach you this type of music, and now you're like, okay, now I got to go figure out what this is, or what, like, who to listen to kind of understand what I'm creating at this point?
Yeah, I think I don't think I don't think it was on my radar at the time, but it was pretty. I thought the chords were beautiful, and I think it spoke to something that was inherently in me already.
Mhm.
A love for a certain kind of chords and progression, and um, but I think I grew to love jazz through
Mhm.
learning bossa nova, and through learning Brazilian music. And then I went on to become really fond of a lot of old jazz songwriters from a really early age, because I to me that sounded like the kind of pop music I wanted to make. And so most of my sort of pop music that I make has since been informed by jazz and by that kind of harmony and Brazilian music. So I think, I don't know, I think he just hit the jackpot in a way by turning
Mhm.
me onto it, and then I would go and explore it myself.
Okay. And with that, like, I mean, were you in lessons for a while? Like, did you take lessons all through middle school, high school, or was it something that once you kind of got a grasp of it, you took it and became like you? And you said it's kind of something you did independently.
Yeah, I I think I took lessons for like maybe 4, maybe 5 years.
Wow.
And
Okay.
immediately after I sort of got the hang of it, and I think the moment I started to actually dare to sing, because my
Mhm.
mom would always encourage me sing, I would write these little like chord progressions, and I would hear the melody inside of me. But my mom would always be listening, and she would say, well, I want to hear the melody that you're hearing, but if in order to share that, you have to sing. And because I would play all these instrumental songs, and they maybe wouldn't amount to much, but she found it beautiful. But she wanted to hear the melody, and so she encouraged me to sing, and that felt really daunting and naked, But the moment I started singing, I could actually communicate the songs and the melodies and even the lyrics, as silly or primitive as they were at that time. And that's when I stopped taking guitar lessons, because then I was like, well, now I've got it from here, I thought,
Okay.
okay, I know enough chords to sort of make progress on my own, and I can sing and I can make songs and I can start playing. I felt like there's nothing more that I need to learn, which of course wasn't true, but I am glad I moved on my own, because I felt, well, I wanted to explore on my own from there. And it still took me years to get really good at songwriting, but it was like I had learned enough chops, and I had a map of the terrain enough that I could carry on my own. So then I quit, and then since then I've just been trying to learn more, of course. With every song I write, I'm trying to learn more, but it's been good sort of finding out some things. You just got to find out on your own, so once you have enough tools at your disposal, then it's good to sort of go on this independent sort of quest for the songs or for the knowledge to do it on your own.
Yeah, you had the vehicle to write the songs and do what you wanted to do with it,
Yeah,
write songs,
yeah.
and now you have the courage to sing. And what gives you the courage to then get on a stage? Like, does your sister say, hey, you're pretty good at this, like I can get you a slot at this wherever she was working for an open mic night? Or
Yeah, pretty much. I think I had once I started singing, I just discovered like this deep desire to perform and to be on that stage. And I felt like this, writing songs and singing, that was a way to justify just sort of basking in the audience attention in a way. I felt I have to present something up there. I can't just go up there just because it feels good to be in front of an audience. So I think my sister and probably everyone in my family, they saw that desire, and also that I became kind of fearless. Like once I came in contact with the stage, I felt free. Like I was terrified in the beginning at first of the idea of going up there, but once I got up there, I was very fearless, and I was very unafraid and bold, and it was clear that I loved being on stage. So I felt pretty quickly, I just felt completely unfazed by the act of stepping up on any stage. I just loved it, and I felt like, well, I felt I can do anything up here. Life off stage, that's frightening, but being on stage, that was suddenly I realized that was a whole, for me, it just, I don't know why, but it just felt like a completely free, I felt very uninhibited and free, and inspired whenever I was up there. I felt like there were different rules for me on stage. I could do stuff there and express things on stage that I couldn't find a way to do and express in real life. And so I think that really informed my songwriting also. Like I could really use these songs and my time on stage to express some things that I find really difficult to talk about in real life. And that was such a revelation.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to know that, you know, you almost had more of a confidence when you were up there, right, than
Yeah,
in person with people.
completely. It was a, I think it was very, because I always felt I don't know, kind of shy. Like I felt I had like certain platforms or certain settings where I could thrive, but I was not a very like um and I enjoyed, you know, I enjoyed sometimes being funny in class or saying funny things. So it was obvious that I enjoyed an audience and I enjoyed creating a reaction in people, but I wasn't very, you know, tough, or I didn't play any sports. I didn't do any of
Mhm.
those things. So I felt like a pretty, you know, sensitive, shy kid in many ways. I don't know if that always came across, because I I wasn't I had friends, and you know, I had
Mhm.
like a platform, but once I found the stage, and once I found music, I felt like, oh well, that's where I'm
Sure.
thriving. You know, that's where
Mhm.
I need to be. Yeah.
It's interesting because I mean, personally, I'm a really introverted person, and if you put me in a crowd of
Right.
people or around people, I'm just like, oh, like I don't know how to
Right.
handle myself. But
Right.
I've done radio, and I was on the radio for, you know, upwards to 17 years, and I do this, and I can talk to people like this. Uh, I feel like me personally, I wonder if you have a similar situation where, like, I know I can be open with people and chatty and extroverted because I kind of know, I feel like I know it's to expect, so to speak. Like I know what I'm doing because I've done it for a while. Like, do you feel like because you are going to go on a stage and it's like all eyes on you, but you're like, okay, I got this set list. I've kind of planned out my moves. Like, do you feel like that kind of helped with your confidence level as far as like being in a situation where now you're around all these people and it's like, okay, you don't really know what's going to come at you. Like that's how I feel. I don't know if you had a
Right.
similar feeling.
Yeah, I guess in some ways, but I really thrived on not really planning too much. And that
Okay.
was maybe what surprised me, because I felt in real life I really tried to I wanted to maybe control you know, how people saw me, or you wanted to control things that can't be controlled. But on
Sure.
stage, I found very quickly that I thrived on you know, improvisation. I
Hmm.
thrived on sort of on just responding, almost, you know, yeah, like improv. You know, I felt um, I never felt at a loss for like something to say or do. And I know a lot of people who are really good at playing music. They hate that part of going on stage, because
Right.
they don't know what to say or where to put their hands. But I felt the opposite immediately when I was on stage. I felt like things just came to me, and I would sometimes forget to play the actual song because I really enjoyed the interaction with the crowd so
Hmm.
much, and I certainly enjoyed the attention. So it was like entering this zone where that it just, the things that could get awkward and strange for me in real life or interactions, or you know, I was never, it was not easy for me to approach maybe a girl that had a crush on, or stuff
Hmm.
like that. But on stage I felt like I got superpowers, and I could sort of seduce the audience in a way that I could never seduce a girl in real life,
Right,
you know,
right. Yeah.
as a kid or as a teenager. So
Hmm.
I found like these things. It felt like superpowers in a way, even if, you know,
Sure.
just a small room and an open
Mhm.
mic, and I was, you know, 13, 14, 15 years old. I'm sure I was presenting a lot of stuff that was, you know, not necessarily very good yet, but but it was clear, I think, to everyone that like, whoa, you know, this guy has, at least he's got some balls to just stand there and
Right,
like
right.
make it look like he actually you know, deserves to be up on stage. You know, that was
Mhm. Which
a rush.
sure, which is a thing in itself. Because if you get up there and you're like timid and you don't really know what you're doing, then people are kind of like, "What's up? What's up with this person?" Like,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
bring a personality up there and you're kind of big in the sense of like, okay, you're being, you know, quick and witty, and you're playing, and it's just like you're probably building off the audience, and they're seeing their reactions, and you're like, okay, this is working. Then
Yeah,
it's almost like it's boosting your confidence as you kind of move
totally,
forward.
totally,
Yeah, I
totally.
like that.
Yeah.
What would you say, like, okay, so you get comfortable on stage, you're writing songs, you get to play these shows, your sister's hooking you up with some gigs and stuff. Like, what is the next, like, milestone? I know you got signed pretty early on, not early on, but I mean, you signed a deal with a major label on
Yeah.
before your first record, but like prior to that and that whole situation, like what led up to that?
Yeah, I think I got really lucky because one of these open mic gigs at one of the clubs my sister worked at, there was like I think word just got around, oh, there's this kid, and I grew up in a small town, so, like 250,000 people live here. So word gets around in the music scene pretty quickly. There's this kid, and it was enough that this local producer, who I knew very well who he was, HP
Hmm.
Gunderson is his name. He invited me to his studio, and he hadn't even seen the show, but he had heard talk, and he said, "Oh, come up to the studio, and you want to play me some songs." And
Wow.
I knew very well who he was. He was really cool, or still is really cool producer, songwriter, musician, really, really beautiful artistic soul, like. And I just walked up there, and he said, I was really nervous and timid, and then when he asked me to play, I just looked him in the eye and I played this, mediocre song that I had written, but
Hmm.
and I think he really just liked that energy of like switching from, that sort of more timid, normal teenage vibe, and then but when you're playing the music, it's serious, and it's full commitment.
Right.
um because I think he's told me, like, it wasn't the song itself wasn't that good, but there was something there, and so he immediately just let me come by the studio whenever there was nothing going on there. I got comfortable in the studio. I could play him my new songs.
Hmm.
We did demos, and it was, he really was incredibly generous, and had the best intentions. And then I think I was always hoping that whatever I came by, I was always hoping that I'd play him something new that he would be like, okay, okay, now we're talking. Now let's make a record, because
Hmm.
he was very critical, but encouraging, but he, I felt really honored that he zoomed in on my songs, because that's what I was, that's what I wanted. I wanted someone to really take me seriously, as a
Hmm.
songwriter, and he did. Even before I had much to offer, and then when I was 16, um, he he had invited me to the studio as usual, and I think I had told him I have a new batch of songs, and I played him a bunch of the new songs, and he actually turned around and he said, "All right, let's make a record." And
Wow.
it was amazing. It was what I had been hoping for so long.
Hmm.
I felt, of course, I was 16, but I felt like I was running out of time. I was so ready, but suddenly, yeah, he really inspired me, and he challenged me to write better songs, and suddenly I did, and that was basically, those were the songs for my first album, called Faces Down, that he co-produced. And um and he sent around these demos to labels, and I signed to Virgin Records, and yeah, things just happened suddenly. Things actually happened really fast. I had to complete school. My mom and dad wanted me to complete school before the record came out, but I released a couple of EPs that did really well in Norway,
Hmm.
and I got to work with a really cool label, major label, but really, really great people, and I felt really protected. I was very strict. I was very, like, uncompromising. I was really, really pretentious,
Right.
but in a good way. I really wanted to protect my music, and I was not gonna be anyone's teenage puppy and you just do whatever. I wanted to really make a record that I was proud of, and I did, and suddenly I was, you know, touring the world, and it was released in a lot of other, you know, in Europe, in Asia, in America eventually the year after. And I found myself touring in America, and that was something I never imagined would happen. America seems so far away, but that record did pretty well in America, and
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, my, you know, in just a couple of years, my life changed a great deal, you know. And from I think the album came out when I was 18, and then by the time I was 19, I was spending most of my time touring in America, and eventually I moved to New York. So it was really wild, explosive time, but it somehow just felt natural to me, because it was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, like this is what this had to happen, you know,
Right. That's
somehow.
what you
But
were working for
yeah,
sure.
exactly. But
Wow.
I did feel really privileged, because I did work with a lot of really good people, both on the creative side, obviously my producer, and the musicians that I was surrounding myself with gave me a lot of, you know, like a footing that felt secure. And yeah, I got pretty lucky. I worked with good people on the label side as well, and there was still, you know, a lot of money in the sort of major label system at the time. So
Yeah.
I just got in right before the bottom fell out of that, and at least I had a couple of years where, with like tour support, and we made music videos, and you know, like
Yeah, you get to do
I
all the rock story type
yeah,
things.
exactly. And then you know, when I got to like maybe my second or third album, by that time, you know, MP3 and all, you know, all that stuff was happening, and I started to sense that, you know, the way that I make music, and the way I want to make sure that I'm always doing exactly what I want creatively and artistically, um, is probably not compatible with being on a major label forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was probably spending more of their money than they were making back. So it just adds up. So I after my fourth record, I started trying to, you know, just create my own label to put out my own music, to sort of retain control over it, and basically learn a whole new way of being an artist, and become a fully independent recording and touring artist. And that's been sort of my life the last 10 years, I guess.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, even after, I mean, I'm curious because I think this is a great film. Dan, in real life, you wrote a bunch of the songs
Yeah.
for the record or for the
Yeah.
soundtrack. And
Yeah.
with that, were you still on Virgin at that time, or was that after,
Yeah.
towards the end?
That was towards the end. I had when that came about, I was 2 records into my career, and I was just about to release a record called Duper Sessions, which was, I guess, more of a overtly jazz inspired record.
Mm-hmm.
And the director, Peter Hedges, came to my door. At that point I was living in the West Village in New York, and
Okay.
he came to my door. It turns out his shrink was in my basement, and he had reached out because he
Like
was
he was
writing this.
literally in the basement, or
Yeah,
was.
he went to a shrink that it was located in the same building, in the basement of my
Oh,
door.
okay.
And he
That's
found out
crazy.
this because he contacted my manager at the time, and said, "Hey, I really want to get in touch with this guy Sondre Lerche, because I've been writing this movie called Dan in Real Life, and I've only been listening to his music while doing it. He had been listening to Faces Down and Two Way Monologue, and the songs were starting to appear in the script, and he said, I want you to compose all the music for my movie."
Wow.
And it was a wild thing. I just moved to New York, and you know, I just gotten married. I just like trying to become an adult, and he comes and says, so I cast Steve Carell and Juliette Binoche to be in this film. We're gonna
Huge.
shoot it. Yeah, shoot it half a year from now. but I want you to just start working now. I want you to read the script and start making music. And both do songs, original score, and also he wanted to use some of the older songs. So this was happening all at once. I was at that time releasing one record and recording another. So I was in a really, productive, busy state. And then suddenly I was also doing this major motion picture film score, so it was a very strange, overwhelming time. I was maybe 23 at the time. So it was really cool. And once again, I got to work with amazing people. And Peter, the director, is one of the loveliest, warmest human beings I've ever met. He was very encouraging, and he insisted that I can do this. And I did my best, and I got to work under his protection. So it was really, really a cool experience, but it was not something I saw coming at all. And it felt like, obviously, a movie like that, you're going to be exposed to a whole new audience, and who are going to be attached to the music because of the way that the film makes them feel, and then hopefully the music adds to that. So it was a really, really great opportunity, and it definitely solidified this idea that, okay, well, I think I'm going to probably stay in America for a while. I enjoyed living there, and suddenly I had this side gig as a film composer.
Yeah, and that's so huge, right? I mean, at that point, I mean, Steve Carell is so huge, but he was like peaking at that, and like Dane Cook was in the movie, and he was doing like really well.
Yeah.
So I mean, was that kind of, were you? I mean, I don't want to stick on this too long, but it's just very fascinating to me. I mean, just switch gears like that, going from like just writing a record and putting them out to now, like, you have to read a script and then develop songs kind of around what's happening in the dialogue. And like, was that a fun project? And was that hard to kind of, turn on a dime and work that way?
Yeah, it was. I found it really challenging. I didn't always know what was expected, and I basically just tried to come up with as much stuff as possible so that Peter could hear it and basically say, no, that's not it, this is interesting. It was really hard to write songs with lyrics that didn't sort of over comment on the film or the scene. So it was a whole new experience, but it was good for my ego to sort of suddenly be just writing music that was supposed to serve someone else's vision, so I learned a lot from that, and I'm glad that I had a lot of time to invest in between touring and releasing this records, that I could literally be on the set and write music on the set, which apparently doesn't ever. Everybody was telling me, like, this, don't get used to this is not how films are usually scored. The composer doesn't, usually the composer comes in after the movie's shot. Here I was writing to the script before it had been filmed, and suddenly Peter was writing a scene where I appear with my band, and he flew over my band from Norway to be in the final scene in the movie. So all this stuff happened, and I would also he wanted me to get to know the actors and to work with them on music, not like not original songs, but he wanted me to coach them in singing songs that he gave them, like famous songs that he felt corresponded with their character. So I was one-on-one with Juliette Binoche and John Mahoney and Diane Weiss, all these amazing actors, just sitting with them working on. So I was sort of a music coach all of a sudden, and then that was, I don't know that I necessarily knew what to do with that role because I felt overwhelmed, but it was fun nevertheless, and it did inspire me. I was also, Steve Carell didn't really have time to learn to play the guitar. He was going to, but he didn't have time. He was filming The Office. He was filming Evan Almighty, you know, it was
Yeah,
crazy.
he had like a million things going on at that
He
point.
was all over the place. And The Office just happened to be my favorite show. So
Oh wow.
I was amazed that I was, you know, texting my brother at home saying like, well, today I'm working with Steve Carell because I'm gonna be the guy playing the guitar. He's gonna pretend to play the guitar. We're gonna have eye contact. They're gonna shoot him, and he's gonna basically match my. We're gonna match each other's movements, and he's gonna sing
Wow.
my let my love open the door, which
Hmm.
we did all this live, but only I'm playing the guitar, but you're seeing him playing the exact same guitar. So I found myself in a lot of really strange situations just on set, making this stuff work beyond just making music for the film. I was playing music with all these actors. So it was really, really cool. It was not something I ever expected to be doing. And the film came out very, very well, and people loved it. And it's a meaningful film to a lot of people. And those songs that, you know, I wrote a lot of songs that didn't make it onto the film because I didn't always know what to do. So I just wrote as much as possible so we would have a lot to pick from. But editing and putting music in was also really fun because it happened just a couple of blocks from where I lived at the time. So I could be a part of the early editing of the movie and try out pieces for the score. So that really helped me a great deal as well, because it would have been hard for me, I think, at that point to score something like without trial and error, you know.
Right,
So
right.
it was cool. Yeah.
That's amazing that you had that opportunity to really be on set instead of them being like, you know, him coming to you and saying, I love what you're doing. I love these records. I want you to score this film. And here it is. Good luck.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly.
Or how do you,
Yeah.
yeah. That's so you
It
probably
was
got feedback as the film was being shot.
Yeah, absolutely. As it was being shot and as we were editing it, and you know, thankfully, I think for me, Peter wanted a really sort of naked, handmade feel to
Mhm.
everything. So he was really resistant to use strings or to use anything that reminded him of a normal sort of Hollywood score, and that made it actually easy for me to record a lot of it at home. You know, I recorded it, and you could hear the radiator in my room
Wow.
in some of it. So it's a really unusual score for a relatively big Touchstone Pictures Walt Disney production. But
Yeah, it's
we did
huge.
that because he wanted it that way, and he wanted things to sound a little sloppy and human, you know, as he put it. And then we finished it off in the studio with some strings and some other instrumentation, and you know, the song that I do with where I had Regina Spektor sing
Hmm.
one of the songs with me. We did that also in New York, but it was yeah, it was a strange time in my life.
That's so cool though. So cool. When you got, how quickly did that happen? Like how long had you been living in New York when that kind of came together for you?
I'd been living for a year probably. I moved to New
Okay.
York in 2005, and then early 2006, I think I met Peter, and then got to work pretty quickly because because I was touring, I just had to, whenever I had free time,
Time.
I just had
Yeah.
to work on Down in Real Life, and then I'd be gone for a month, and then something, you know, yeah,
Mhm.
it was so through 2006, 2007, I would work on this a lot, and then I think we locked picture and music by sometime in the summer of 2007, and the film came out that fall, and I got to meet all the cast of The Office at the premiere in Hollywood.
That's insane. That's so cool. That is
Yeah.
so cool. I'm curious, what took you to New York? Was it just the fact that you had been touring the US at this point and you had some success here? Was it like, okay, this is just the next logical move to the United States?
Yeah, probably. It was that, and then my girlfriend at the time, or who I married, she was from Norway, but she was going to go to school in New York when we met, and I was there a bunch, and so she was going to live there for a couple of years. It just made sense. You know, I had a label and a pretty good setup there, and so it just seemed like the adventurous, bold move to just, okay, well, let's get married and live in New York. You know, it was
Sure.
kind of wild.
That's amazing though. And then you eventually moved to Los Angeles, correct? Was that years later?
Yes, I did. Yeah, that was like, I think I lived in New York for 13 years. And then
Wow.
I moved to LA, and I lived there for 2 years before the pandemic happened.
Pandemic.
I came home.
Okay.
But I lived in Hollywood, right down the street from the movie theater where Danny in Real Life premiered. It was very strange to be back in Hollywood,
Mhm.
and live there, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm curious, like once you got to New York and your career is obviously continuing to go, you did in real life. Like after that film, like what would you say between? I'm sure there's a ton of them, but like what were like kind of the big milestone moments for you between like during your time in or during your time in New York after the film had came out?
Um, well, then I think, you know, I put out a couple of records,
Mm-hmm.
and I was figuring out this more sort of independent way of basically doing it myself, or financing the records and touring responsibly, you know. And so I was touring a bunch, but I was sort of, I think I was just trying to figure out a lot of stuff with regards to just, oh, how do I do this, you know, how do I become the master of my own career, in a sense, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot, you know, because I had been pretty privileged early on in my career. I had a lot of good helpers, and now I was, you know, growing up, I was trying to find out how to sort of master it, be the master of my own domain, sort of. And so I put out a couple of records. I think for me, a big breakthrough was I made the record, a record called Please, which
Mm-hmm.
came out in 2014, and that was creatively a big breakthrough, where I experimented more with different ways of writing and different ways of recording, working with a bunch of different producers rather than one, co-producing myself, and really sort of stepping up. I felt that was at the time, and you know, my best work. Um, and I'm still very proud of that record. And I feel that record was very liberating to me. You know, it was important work, and I think energizing also for a lot of my audience. You know, because it definitely had a new energy and a much bolder palette. So I think it energized and maybe even reached some new people. I've done a lot of different stuff. So you win, you gain some audience and you lose some
Right.
by changing and by evolving, and that's fine. But I felt that record was energizing in a lot of ways.
And you were going through a lot personally there. I mean, from what I've read, is you
Yeah,
call it like your divorce record, right? I mean, I don't
yeah.
want to get too far into that, but like that's interesting that
No,
you
no.
say that you kind of put out your best piece of work at that moment.
Yeah, I think you know, it was definitely labeled the divorce album, and I think it took people by surprise in the sense that it was not like like a sort of bitter, whiny divorce record. It was a
Right.
lot of things, but it was really, it had a lot of energy and a lot of lust for life, and also a lot of empathy. I really wanted to try to write from any possible perspective and to try to understand what was happening in my own life, and why my life as I knew it was dissolving, but also what new uh, experiences and new life could come from that. So I think there was a maturation happening that was
Hmm.
really good for me ultimately, and I feel that the record is a manifestation of that sort of strength, and that, and you know, the willingness to be vulnerable, and to understand that this is not something that's happening to you, but it's rather an opportunity for new perspectives, and to move on with love and empathy, really. So I
Hmm.
feel that record, you know, it was a turning point in that sense, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I would think that like, yeah, you'd have a lot of emotions into that record, a lot of stuff to if you were going through a whole lot and then it's like, okay, was it like a release? Like, okay, I got to get all this out. I can get all this out. And then once it was out, is that, how was that part of, I mean, maybe some of that feeling? I don't know.
Yeah, I felt really just really energized, and I felt more sort of I wanted to suddenly I wanted to start moving more on stage. I wanted to sort of free myself from the guitar so I could dance, I could move. So it was also sort of about inhabiting your body more in the music and on stage. So I really started to I started to challenge myself more with what I do on stage and think more conceptual about the sort of visual representation of the music, the videos. I started getting much more involved and have much more initiative with regards to just everything. So I felt like that's when I really grew into the kind of really independent auteur in music, and that I think I always wanted to be.
Sure.
Yeah, it just took a little bit of life happening for it to
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah. And with your the next record after that, Pleasure, is the latest record, I guess, compared to the new one that's coming out, right? So that's the gap,
There,
right? Or did you
well,
have something
there's
in between then?
yeah, there's Pleasure from 2017, and then there's Patience also. So there was almost like a bit of a trilogy with
Oh, sure, sure, sure. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got
Please, Pleasure,
confused
and
there.
Patience. No,
Pleasure and
that's fine.
Patience.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of records, and there's a lot of P's in that little trilogy. But
So
yeah, I did the last album I did was Patience in 2020, right?
yeah, so what
Right in the middle.
Please, Pleasure, Patience was kind of the trilogy of the
Yeah,
record. And were you writing in that sense, or did it just kind of happen that way?
it kind of happened.
Okay.
I was feeling, yeah, I was just feeling really inspired, really, and I was touring a lot. And suddenly, also, I had developed this great relationship with my backing band, who I started playing with in 2011. And so I had this whole new platform, creative platform, and it just Please just bled into Pleasure, which was even more sort of groovy and electronic and physical, in both on stage and on record, and then Patience was this album that really I worked on and off for 7 years since the beginning of that whole trilogy. That when I was writing that and making and completing that album, it felt like the record I always wanted to make. It felt like a very sort of substantial statement for my entire career and my life's work, really.
Mhm.
And it was really a joy to share that record, even though a lot of plans were halted because of the pandemic. um, it felt really meaningful to share a record called Patience in that strange time, and for it to sort of correspond. I felt that it corresponded with some of what people were needing and what people were feeling and people were going through. So it was sort of a strange, uh, uh, timing wise. It was sort of I don't know, not lucky, but it felt
Right.
like it was meaningful somehow that the record did actually come out in that time. And then I thought, well, now I'm not going to put out a record for a long time because I made this big statement. And then basically the last year and a half I spent in Norway touring a lot solo whenever I could, because socially distanced, of course, and
Right.
just trying to hustle and find ways of still doing what I do, even though we're not allowed to do it, and that actually proved really fruitful. I think in the same way that I always thrived on improvising on stage, I found I really actually thrived on improvisation in my career and with the constantly changing landscape of touring during the last 2 years. And then I just also parallel to that, started writing all these really dense lyrical new songs that I felt, in a way, now I felt I was suddenly making the record I never thought I'd be able to make, and that's what's become this double album,
Mhm.
Avatars of
Yeah.
Love.
I'm
So that
curious.
it surprised me as much as anyone.
Well, did you say Patience was songs that you had been writing over the course of 7 years? Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you had the two other records that came out that the songs just didn't fit on, or
Yeah,
like,
I think it came out of that because like um some of the songs that didn't fit on, please, I would continue with those for pleasure, but then there were songs that didn't fit into either one of those, and those became the starting point for Patience, and that
okay.
informed some of what I was looking for there. But with this new one, with Avatars of Love, it's really just all songs that I wrote within the span of 1 year. And so
Wow.
it's written and recorded in the span of 1 year. So it was this very, explosive process where I didn't really try to write songs, but it just happened. And then suddenly some of the songs are 10 minutes long and they have 10 verses. And, it really, I didn't know much else to do than to just try to capture it and complete it. And I was working on like some extra weird energy that I didn't really know
Mhm.
from before. So it felt like a new chapter in many ways. Yeah. And so
Mhm.
suddenly there's a double record of
Oh,
like
wow.
86 minutes of music. It's a lot to take
Yeah.
in.
So you moved from New York to Los Angeles, and then you're in Los Angeles when the pandemic happens. Is that what kind of brought you home to Norway, or like?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much. Yeah, I was in LA beginning of March, and I left for Norway because I started getting a bad feeling. I was like, shit, this is probably more serious than I think, and it was much more serious than I thought at the time because I thought, well, I'll go home for a month and then I'll come back.
Hmm.
I was about to announce the album, announce tours, announce videos, do all this stuff,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, I'll go home to Norway and maybe I can keep the wheels in motion there because it's a little smaller country, more tighter,
Hmm.
and Trump wasn't president of Norway, so that was good. um so I went home, but I didn't really expect to stay there, but because of everything that was happening, in order to keep keep wheels in motion, I ended up staying in Norway, where because I was able to do couple of more things here than I would have been able
Right.
to in America. In the end, I was really thankful that I could come home,
Hmm.
and suddenly, 2 years have passed, and now I'm still here. So it's a
Still
little
there.
strange. Yeah, yeah,
I'd read that you kind of had a different approach to this record, which is a double album, which is incredible to have read a double record in a span of a year. But from what I read, you were saying that you were writing a song and then kind of just putting it out instead of like
yeah,
sitting on it too long. You were just write the song, record it, and then that was the version.
yeah. Exactly. I was able to just spend like a week or two just really focusing on a song that I had been feeling coming on, and then go straight into the studio. I had like 4 or 5 different studios and constellations of co-producers and musicians that I work with, so I could have a lot of stuff going at the same time,
Hmm.
and I was kind of working overtime. But it's a strange time because I was also like partying a lot, and I was training for my 5th marathon, and I was training to run
What? Your
one
fifth marathon? Like you full
yeah,
marathon?
yeah, I because I started running marathons as like in like 2017, which was a
Wow.
complete surprise because I never was into sports, but I had to run to be in better shape to be able to sing and move on stage, and one thing led to another, and I ran the New York Marathon, and then I started just wanting to run more, and I got really close. I ran Chicago, was my fourth marathon. I got really close to doing it in 3 hours, and then of course I had to try to get below 3 hours, and that was my main goal this summer of 2020, was just training to be able to run in under 3 hours, and that was while all this was happening, and I was playing all these solo shows and traveling around the country on my own. So it was a really strange time, and then in between I'd be hanging out with friends and drinking wine, and then that's also when I had the idea to start like a this natural wine brand. So I did that, and I wrote children's books. It was very strange. I just
Oh my God.
started
You're
so much.
busy.
I started so
Busy.
many weird things that that made sense to me, and that still make sense. But I had a lot of energy and a lot of like, I wanted a lot of stuff I wanted to get going and get out into the world. And I'm glad for it, but I'm trying now to be, you know, to to not burn out completely, because it's been pretty intense the last
Oh,
2
I
years.
can't even imagine. Just the record and training for marathons alone sounds like way too much. And then, you know, you said you started a wine company and you're writing children's
Yeah,
books as well. Oh my goodness.
yeah. We just launched actually two of the bottles in America as well. It's called Potos. It's organic biodynamic wine. One is like a cava, a sparkling delicious wine, and another is a rosé from Spain, from Catalonia. And now I'm working on some Italian wines in the same brand. That's hopefully we're going to be
Wow.
able to share later this year. But it's been really, really cool to be able to branch out into winemaking. It's very, I didn't see that coming either, but I do enjoy wine, but I'm not a specialist. But I've always enjoyed wine rather than beer and, you know, spirits. So I'm learning a lot and just trying to create a really cool experience and a cool brand for
Mhm.
really good products, you know.
That is awesome. Is that why you're doing so many wineries on this tour coming out?
I guess I didn't think of that, but it's,
I think you're
yeah,
putting
city
5 city wineries. One of them is here in Nashville, and
wineries.
I'm going to that because that's where I'm
Okay,
at
good.
now. I know you're
I
playing
gotta
San
make
Diego,
sure.
which is a bar, and
Yeah.
the soda bar, but I don't know if it's kind of it's more of a rock club, so I don't know if they sell wine there. Maybe they
I
do.
gotta make sure that they have my wines at all these city
That's what I
wineries
mean.
for the
Yeah.
tour. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. It wasn't even a correlation. It just happened to happen that way.
Yeah, I guess they're yeah, I haven't actually thought of that, but now that you mention it, it's a no-brainer. But yeah, they have a lot of cool venues around, and they're yeah, they're pretty artist friendly, so it made
Sure.
sense to do a couple of those.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did see the last show on your tour is in Nashville, so
Yeah,
we'll
end of
be
tour.
here. That's
That's
amazing.
fantastic. That's amazing.
So cool. And like I said, I love the songs that you put out so far on this new record. The 10-minute version, which you cut into, I think about 7.5, 8 minutes for the music video. The fact that you have the art is like hand drawn, you know, dancing, and that had to be a whole production in itself, just putting together 10 minutes of like animated
Well,
footage.
yeah, that's why like CJ Wallace is the director who animated and directed the video for Avatars of Love, and he was asking me. I sent him the song, and of course the deadline was you know, way too soon. But he was a good sport, and he said, but you know, do you think are you okay with, can we fade at some point, you know, because it's
Mhm.
10 minutes long, but the vocals are over after 7 minutes.
Seven and a
Are
half
you
minutes.
okay
Yeah.
with, if I can fade it there, it just means I have, it takes me 3 weeks less
Yeah,
to make this
3 minutes
video.
left, like a
Yeah,
full song less
yeah.
to do.
So I was like, yeah, of course, of course. So we just faded out, but the full album version, yeah, is 10 minutes and 21 seconds, and
Yeah.
it's got a pretty good saxophone solo there, so it's worth
It's a
hearing.
rad song. I love you're discussing all this stuff in pop culture too. Is that just stuff you were experiencing throughout the pandemic? I mean, talk about Taylor Swift's 2 Taylor Swift records and Britney Spears, which she had a lot of focus on during the pandemic. And
Yeah, there's a lot of there's songs and albums that are meaningful to me. There are artists who I was thinking about. I'm very interested in pop culture, and especially, of course, the interaction between uh, persona and art, you know, and obviously really famous people are become, or famous characters and names become really interesting because they become larger than life as personas, but they're still vulnerable artists creating
Mhm.
art from a very personal perspective. And Taylor Swift is very interesting and obviously very talented. And I've had a great affinity for Britney Spears and been following her sort of emancipation. And I actually did a Britney Spears sort of cover EP in 2019, just at the beginning of the Free Britney movement, to sort of, I don't know, to bring, it just felt meaningful to sort of bring that into focus. And so I was happy to follow that case.
I didn't know that. What's the EP called? That's all Britney.
It's called Britney. There's one song. Yeah, there's an original song that I wrote, inspired sort of by her struggles and her battle, and then there's 3 different collaborations that I did on Britney Spears songs. So I did that right before the Patience album came out. Yeah.
Oh wow, I need to find this thing on the internet, because I didn't.
Yeah,
I saw
cool.
you had a covers, like I was listening to some of your covers, like you did Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus and stuff. I love your song choices, because like I'm such a sucker for female pop stars, like their music. I love it. Oh wow, I did find it every time. Okay, cool, amazing. I'm gonna have to check that out. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Sondre, for doing this. This has been amazing, and I'm gonna definitely come check you out. I think the 29th of May, you're doing a show here in Nashville.
Think that's it. That's the final show of the.
And then
US tour.
what's after that? You heading home right away, or?
I'm heading home. I've got a bunch of like festival shows here in Norway for the summer. And then, you know, we'll see. Maybe there'll be some more in the fall.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're going to be around for a couple days, I have an open house for you.
Thanks, man. I wish I could stay, but I have to be in Norway.
And get home.
I got to be in Norway, ready to play on June 1st.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, you got a tight schedule.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see you, man. And I appreciate you doing this interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have one more quick question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Man, I kind of have like boring advice, but it is you know, to really be true to yourself, and if you don't yet know sort of what you want to do or where you're going, like spend some time to figure that out, you know, and really find out why one thing is more meaningful to you than the other, you know, in music and also in how you present yourself or how you want to be seen. Because I think it's so easy for people to take advantage of you if you don't know what you want to do, who you are, and what is the substance that really gets you going. And I think that's really important, to not be, oh, I'm fine with that. If you're fine with all too many things, then I don't know that you should be an artist. You know, I think you need to really, really know yourself. And I think songwriting is about seeing through yourself, you know, and really understanding who you are. And then I think that makes for really compelling artists. So
I love
that work never ends, you know.